Welcome to Idea to Investment, the podcast where we dig into the exciting world of entrepreneurship and investment. We tell the stories of the tech creators doing innovative work and the investors who back them up. Along the way, unveiling the fascinating journey from the birth of an idea to scoring crucial investment. We'll highlight the voices of entrepreneurs, showcasing their grit and creativity, all while gaining insight from the investors who believed in those dreams. Get ready to be inspired, stay informed, and stay tuned as we explore the awesome collision of ideas and investments.
My name is Sydney Robinson. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Vessl Prosthetics.
Hi, my name is Trey Boyles. I'm a serial entrepreneur and the managing director of Techstars Physical Health in Fort Worth. We invest in pre-seed companies that are improving the physical health of patients and consumers all over the world.
Hi, my name is Ken Eastwood, and welcome to Idea to Investment. Few things can alter your life like losing a limb. Almost every aspect of your everyday life is changed forever. For many patients, prosthetics can help, but for others, the pain caused by the prosthetic itself can cause some to reject the new limb, sacrificing their very mobility. It's an issue Vessl Prosthetics is making astounding progress on. With her investor pitch, once again, here's Vessl CEO and co-founder, Sydney Robinson.
Well, the easiest way to think about it is I like to start by asking, have you ever worn a pair of shoes that gives you blisters? And the answer, of course, is yes. We all have all experienced that. But did you know that a leg is actually amputated every 30 seconds around the world, and that all amputees experience this exact same problem, but with their leg connecting to their prosthetic leg? And the reason that happens is because the leg actually changes size dynamically throughout the day and in the long term. So it's constantly shrinking and expanding. And this leads to a misfit between the leg and the prosthetic leg, which leads to that chafing. So you get blisters. But blisters are very dangerous for amputees, more so than just us on our feet, because blisters can lead to infection, hospitalization, and another amputation. And it's so frustrating and so painful to deal with this issue that 16% of amputees actually permanently stop using their prosthesis. So current solutions are so bad, people would rather never walk again than wear their prosthetic leg. And that was where, my co-founder and I saw that problem, and we just thought, this is an archaic issue. Why has no one tried to solve this before? And that was where we developed the isoform socket. So the isoform socket dynamically adjusts the size of the socket with each step the amputee takes. And it doesn't rely on flimsy sensors, heavy batteries, or expensive motors to do so. It just dynamically and passively adjusts. And so what that means is amputees can walk comfortably all day, every day, without worrying about those blisters or leading to infection. It also means there's fewer clinic visits for the prosthetist, which is the prosthetic clinician, and the amputee. So it's saving the prosthetic clinician time and money as well.
Wow. So from a human being perspective, this sounds like an amazing thing. But from a business perspective, Trey, as someone who has probably heard, I don't know, thousands maybe of pitches, what is it that stands out for you about the pitch from Vessl?
Well, at this stage in the development of a company, there's so many different elements that can come in that can be problematic for a startup, right? Oftentimes, companies fail not because they don't have a good idea, and not because they don't have a good founder, because of all these other things that can come, these outside forces and market forces and things that happen. And so what attracted me to Vessl was initially was the team. I think with Sydney and Alexi, they have such a passion around what they're trying to do, such a conviction around what they're trying to accomplish. I love the innovation component, the idea that, I was really struck by the fact that 11% of people who need prosthetics think the current solutions are so bad, they'd rather just not walk. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine sitting there going, I'd rather just get in a wheelchair. I'd rather decrease my mobility. I'd rather sacrifice my ability to have, some of the freedom I still could have, but I won't do it because it hurts so bad. So the innovation behind how they're thinking about the socket, how they've designed it, every step of the process they're going through around research, around understanding engineering, around sitting down with actual amputees and having that conversation, the relationships they've built with groups all over North America trying to help develop this. I saw that and I saw, man, that's an entrepreneur that is got a vision. That's an entrepreneur, and just through getting to know Sydney better, she's very coachable. That's extremely important at an early stage and for an investor. And because of the conviction around the problem, the last piece that I look at is, can they persevere? Can they deal with the obstacles that they're going to face as an early stage company to get to the place that they can be successful? The answer was yes. And in my experience, most entrepreneurs that have succeeded, if they're honest, would tell you, I wasn't smarter, I wasn't better, I wasn't faster. I just didn't give up. And when I sense that from that level of conviction from a founder, that goes a long way with me. So there was that, amongst a lot of other things, was the reason why I chose to invest in Vessl. But I'm super excited about what they accomplished prior to Techstars, what they've accomplished since they went through our program, and what they're going to accomplish in 2024 and beyond.
A lot to unpack there, Trey. And Sydney, Trey mentioned the team. And in fact, he seems more excited about the team than the idea itself. So talk to me about the team. Who are they, and what are your backgrounds, and what are their backgrounds?
Yeah, that means we'll get him to invest in all our next companies too. So my background is in biomedical engineering, and I fully agree with Trey. I think that one of our biggest strong suits is the team. And I think you'll see both from the way that we fit together and what each of our backgrounds are, but the way that we work together is also critical. So my background, as I mentioned, is in biomedical engineering. I started in mechanical and quickly lost interest in car engines, and decided that really the human body is where my passion lies. So I've been interested in prosthetics since the beginning of my academic career and now business career. My co-founder is a clinical anatomist. He has his PhD. So the biomedical engineering and clinical anatomy really mesh well together. And just ourselves as people, Alexi and I actually work together in what's called the Medical Innovation Fellowship Program, which is a program out of Western University. It's similar to Stanford's biodesign program. They were really who started it, where they brought engineers, scientists, and doctors together and said, here's your interdisciplinary team, go solve a medical problem. And that was where we started, but that was where Alexi and I met and started working together. So we had 10 and a half months of working together as colleagues. And day one, we hit it off. Loved working together. And he is a fantastic co-founder. So that's really the foundation of the team. And then, as Trey mentioned, we've surrounded ourselves with really incredible advisors. So we have Ben, who is a certified prosthetist in New York, and he gives amazing insights into the clinical problem. And he's really passionate about innovation in this space. So he has some incredible ideas to help push the company forward. We've got Trey, of course, a serial entrepreneur. So he's very helpful on the business side. And then Jim Price is another gentleman who we work with, and he is a product developer. He's trying to retire, but folks like us won't let him. So he's had decades of experience, and that brings a lot of really great foundation, again, to the company.
So anyone in the tech space knows about Techstars, the largest pre-seed investor in the world. This is getting investment from Techstars is a big deal, but it's more than, Trey, it's more than just about the financial investment. Maybe talk about some of the non-financial ways that Techstars is supporting startups like Vessl.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So I think it's important to think about the fact that when we view our relationship with a company, we're making investment that we believe is for the life of the business. And so traditionally, my experience with accelerators is that most accelerators have a pretty good 3-month accelerator program. You meet some mentors, you get connected to some investors, you get some business help, and that's great. But at that point, they sort of say, good luck, call us if you sell your company. And then they turn back around and they go back to finding their next patch of companies, because that's kind of their job. Techstars sees the importance of walking alongside those founders from the beginning until the end. And so we've built out a portfolio services department at Techstars that focuses on continued connectivity to the network, continued connectivity to ongoing introductions to investors based upon what stage you're in and which round you're trying to raise. And so where we start with the program is an intense focus on how do we find the right mentors or add to the existing mentor base that you have? How can we find subject matter experts, experienced entrepreneurs, people that can add value to your team when your team is just small, just maybe 2 people? And then we really focus on, all right, where is the business and what things need to be changed? Now that we've connected you to some mentors, now that you've connected you to the programming that we have, let's make sure you're finding the right customers. You have a good sales pipeline strategy, all of those things, again, that you can't fill completely because you don't have all those skill sets inside of your business. And then finally, we really help them focus on building the narrative and creating a pitch that tells the story of what they are. So many times investors want to hear your vision, but they want to hear a really big vision. Our job is to invest in companies that provide outside returns. And so that we want to do that. And so all of that stuff happens in the 3-month program. And as much as I hope Sydney and all of our other companies had a great experience during that 3 months, I tell all of them that's 3% of your time at Techstars. So let's also make sure we're introducing you to the right people inside the organization so that as you continue, I'm always available. I always want to be helpful, but I have to go find another class too. And so whereas in class, they were my number 1 priority, now they remain a high priority, but not necessarily number 1. So we want to make sure we're engaging the entire asset that is Techstars in a way that can help them grow. And the true differentiator between Techstars and anything else is this: the network is so strong of people who want to give first, who want to engage, who want to help, add value, and really make a material difference in the outcome and ongoing success of a company.
And Sydney, perfect timing too, because you've just come off of that 3-month term and returned from Texas recently. So what tools do you now have in your toolkit that you would say are the most valuable that you return with?
I'd say that there were 2 major ones, and they weren't necessarily the ones I thought were going to be the biggest value add. Okay, I'm thinking 3 now. But a couple of them are, just being surrounded by other founders for 3 months of people who are all working towards the same thing is invaluable. Like I learned so much from the other founders, which I did not anticipate. I knew we'd all be there, but I didn't realize I would learn so much from each of them. So I say that was huge. Certainly the mentors, as Trey said, like you meet so many amazing mentors, and the people who are also just willing to take a call because you're a Techstars company. Like, hey, I'm a Techstars company. You were a Techstars company. What advice do you have? Or we're both in the medical device space and I see you graduated from Techstars. Let's compare notes. So you can connect with so many different people that way as well. We got a clinical collaborator through working with Techstars and through, a mentor who knows someone who knows someone. So it's been incredibly valuable at growing that network, just like Trey said. But I would say one of the biggest pieces that, again, I didn't necessarily anticipate was focus and where to focus. So Techstars puts a lot of emphasis on these key performance indicators. And I think when you learn about key performance indicators in a very traditional workshop, you just learn about like annual recurring revenue and number of customers and things like that. And for a pre-revenue medical device company, they don't really apply. Like we're not there yet. So it was interesting to learn what key performance indicators can we track to make sure we're moving in the right direction. And then you very quickly see where you're spending your time in areas that maybe aren't moving the needle as much. So I found that truly, truly game-changing. And I'm bringing that same level of discernment into 2024 to make us move as fast as possible.
There's so much value in this relationship. It makes me wonder about the timeline, Sydney. At what point along this course did you know that it was time to reach out for investment? And did you always have your sights set on Techstars?
I did actually, yeah. So everybody talks about Techstars and Y Combinator, like they're the 2 biggest early stage investors. You want to be one of their companies, and we incorporated in June of 2022. And the very first time that they launched Physical Health Fort Worth was in September of 2022. And so I had heard about it and got to watch which companies were accepted and what happened as they went through the program. So I had my sights set, not just on Techstars, but on Techstars Physical Health Fort Worth. And so when we were coming up to the time when we were actually able to apply, think it was like March of 2023, I knew for sure we wanted to go to Texas. And there was a couple reasons. It was the program for sure. Honestly, it was a lot of feedback about Trey. People say that people say like it's the managing director that makes the program. And of course, the program manager, Jordan, she's phenomenal, and the rest of the team too. But people say, it really is the leadership that makes the program, and people didn't have a bad thing to say about Trey. They're like, he will bend over backwards for his companies, and that's so valuable. And then the physical space of being in Texas, just from our standpoint strategically, Vessl is helping folks with leg amputations, and diabetes is the leading cause of leg amputations. And veterans are affected differently by amputation than the civilian population. And Texas has a high population of folks with diabetes and veterans. So just that in and of itself was also valuable.
Trey, do you feel that pressure? Sydney talks about how, basically everything begins and ends with the power and ability of a managing director. Do you feel that?
So I think it's important to build a good culture where people feel supported. We often talk about the fact that we wear 3 hats in our program. The first hat is as cheerleader. And so when something goes good, you're not going to have anybody as excited for you as us. And when something goes bad, you're not going to have somebody that encourages you as much as us. The second hat is investor, and that's a little bit more direct. That's a little bit more not, hey, I think you should think about this, but you need to go do this. Trust me, this is the right thing to do. And the third hat, which is my favorite hat, is as entrepreneur. The ability to sit down on the same side of the table as the founder and say, hey, I've been through this before, and I'm going to tell you this is what's going to happen, or I'm going to tell you this is normal, or I'm going to tell you it's okay. I'm telling you that you're enough. I'm telling you you can accomplish this. All of that is exceptionally important. And so between myself and the program manager, Jordan Warnament, like we're very intentional in trying to create that type of culture. The value, though, is how well we can steward the companies to the resources that are available and helping make those resources available. So one person cannot make a program. I think there has to be that connectivity between managing director and founders, just because Sydney and Alexi are trusting us to help them get to the next level, to help steward them on the decisions they should make, to help them think through what steps they should take next in their business. How do they raise money? All of those things. So there has to be that trust there. So I think it's important. That's why we have 53 different programs, because not everybody's going to resonate with my style as much as somebody else, and vice versa. And so that's important. But really, even if I was an expert on amputees and prosthetics, I still would go get 50, mentors to come in alongside of us to help make sure that we are doing our best to support Sydney, to support Vessl, and to make sure they have the best opportunity to move forward.
Trey, I asked Sydney about.
You feel pressure, but not too bad.
I asked Sydney about the timing, and I want to ask you the same thing. You have so much experience, even outside of the physical health sector, outside of tech, just as an investor yourself. How important is that timing when a startup comes to you? Because the things you're talking about, I mean, from a business owner perspective, would be valuable to have right from the very beginning. But clearly, I need to be a little further along than the very beginning to approach investors. So how important is that timing?
So I think the timing is exceptionally important. I think, in my personal opinion, a lot of the companies at an early stage think they're too far along for an accelerator when they're actually not. Having built 20-something companies, the one thing I can tell you is that after I've been under the hood at Techstars, I think any startup that I build from now on, I will apply to Techstars, because what you need as a founder are those connections, those relationships, and that support. And that, to me, is probably until you're a Series A or beyond company, like that's valuable. So I would tell somebody who's about to go through their Series A that I would still consider Techstars. And I would say companies that have, some of my managing director colleagues, will invest in a company that is got an idea on a napkin, that doesn't have a product, has no customers. And so that's why when we think about the six different criteria areas or categories we look at to make an investment at Techstars, the first 3 are all team. So it really does come down to that person and that founding team. as to do they have some of those elements of coachability, of perseverance, of, fortitude to stand through and stick through the process to get to where they need to go. But we do have companies that are at different stages, all coming into the same program. But in the end, it tends to be sort of that pre-seed seed company that understands the value that they're going to get. As an entrepreneur, I can tell people, you're wrong, you should be doing this. I'm not going to convince anybody or force anybody to be an accelerator, but that's a part of the coachability, right? If after 25 companies you're still not coachable, you think you're too much past an accelerator, that might be your demise. You always have to be willing to learn, to listen. I'd say the biggest thing that I have after 20 plus companies is that I don't make some of the same mistakes that I used to make. I still make 5 mistakes a day, but they're not the same ones I made when I was on company 3 or company 2 or company 18 or whatever the case may be. And so that's where the value is. And that's where I can be really helpful to my founders is having been there and done that, knowing what's going to come, knowing that what they're experiencing that seems so insurmountable is completely normal. It's not fair. The excuses all make sense, but in the end, the excuses don't matter. You either deliver and execute or you don't. And that's where we really like to focus on encouraging and supporting them to do that.
Okay, Sydney, Trey brought up mistakes. Let's talk about yours. And maybe not necessarily mistakes, but any small business, any startup knows that you're going to face challenges. I would imagine in the physical health sector, in the prosthetics sector, those challenges, those obstacles have to be exponentially large. What were some of the biggest challenges that you faced? And particularly, what were some of those challenges you faced and overcame?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. People call it hardware because it's hard. I took that from from someone yesterday. I was at a talk and that was what they said. I'm like, yep, I can relate to that for sure. So as Trey said, I'm sure more than 5 mistakes a day. I make, 15 or however many, but it's you learn from each of them. So I would say that the biggest learning I took away was do it earlier. Any of our biggest obstacles, I think, came from you learn through them, right? So one of the biggest obstacles I can think of was we did this big technology revamp. So we had one idea for what the product was going to look like and how it was going to work. And then we had some conversations with prosthetists and presented the design to them. And they're like, great, I love what it does. I don't like how it does it. Or oh, there's these key pieces of information from like a reimbursement standpoint. And so when we took all those key learnings together, we completely redesigned the product. Still does the same end point, still automatically and passively adjusts, just by a completely different mechanism. And that was really, really valuable. But if we had talked to the people earlier or engaged with the engineering firm earlier, like I just feel like there's a few things we could have done earlier. That being said, a lot of the time that we were taking earlier was to do a lot of research and get those key learnings that we can then act on. So, it's hard to say looking back now if we even could have done it earlier, right? We needed all of that knowledge, but I definitely think it's one thing that for my next company, I'll push for.
I like that. She's already looking forward to the next company. Is there, Sydney, is there a perception? I mean, I feel like this exists, this perception exists that a lot of those challenges, a lot of those obstacles, I can eliminate as soon as I get investment funding. I will be able to buy my way out of those challenges. Is that an accurate assumption? Does that exist? And is that the reality?
Money makes life easier. I don't think that anyone will deny that. It certainly makes building a company easier when you have the capital. But I go back to my earlier statement of you need that knowledge. And especially as a founder, I'm the face of the company. Like Alexi and I are running this company. We are the founders. We have to know this product, this company, our relationships inside and out. So to just pay for something else, you can. But the problem with that is that then you're reliant on some of these other groups. I'm sure there's a way to do it elegantly, but you really do need to be involved in order to know that intimately, in order to be able to bring people on board, right? Like the way that I believe I bring people on board is they can see my passion. And anytime they have a question, I'm like, oh yeah, we talked to someone about that. We talked to this person, we talked to that person, and I'm open to your opinion. And if you have a different perspective, I'd love to hear it. But these are the conversations I've had so far. And I think that that really brings, I was speaking to a prosthetist, and he said, he was a little quiet. I had given him the product demo, and he goes, I had been pitched by several engineers products where they clearly had never spoken to an APT before bringing this to me, because there's no way an APT would use this. So one of our biggest value adds is he could clearly see, as many other people have, that we have taken the time to speak to those people. So I think that, yes, capital can move you forward faster. For sure it can, but you still have to be building that yourself.
I see a lot of head nodding from Trey, so I would imagine the answer from you is the same, Trey. Is it realistic to expect that you can spend your way beyond the major obstacles that will come your way?
Yeah, it's a mixture of several things, right? One of it is vision and really having a clear plan on what things you think you need to do in order to grow. And at this stage, you're really having, because you don't have enough traction to warrant an investment based upon your success. And so what you have to do is communicate effectively to an investor, I need this amount of money and I'm going to go do these things. And then once we do these things, we're going to do these things and these things and these things. And therefore, the investors at that stage, they understand that. And that's what they're looking for, is a clear vision. And so that piece is important. You've got to get out there and you've got to create a plan and go get it. And so you do have to spend ahead of time to get there, right? To make money, you have to spend money, obviously. And I think that's an important piece. The other thing I tell people all the time is, and this is another thing successful entrepreneurs will tell you if they're honest, at some point in the development and growth of your business, you hit a luck piece. And you call it serendipity, you can call it karma, you can call it, providence, whatever you want to call it. But the reality is there's something happens that your company didn't deserve and isn't ready for. That only happens if you're in the space, if you're fully engaged, you're doing every day the kind of things. And then one day you get a phone call from somebody who runs a large prosthetics, organization and says, I've heard about your new product. Can you send me a couple of those ISO forms over? I want to look at them. And if we like them, we'll put them out across our entire network. Well, that's not because Sydney called them or because Sydney had a certain number of sales. It was because she was just in the right place, networking the right people, spending time doing the things that you have to do in order to make it. And then that opportunity happens, and then it tends to take off to the next level. So you have to wait for that luck a little bit, but you have to put yourself in that space. I always tell people $1 billion is not going to drop out of the sky next to you. But if you're in the right place and you're digging holes and there's money in the ground, you may just find some. And so it's just a perspective. It's that perseverance piece that I think is so important. But also looking at the fact that at this stage, you're really having to convince somebody to invest in something that doesn't really exist yet. Even though she's got a great prototype, even though she's doing all the right things, somebody's not going to come in and say your sales at this point warrant $1 million check. They're going to say, I believe you can go make this company worth X. Therefore, I will give you $1 million check.
Sydney, let's talk about where the company is now, where you expect to be, say, a year from now or even 10 years from now.
Absolutely. So right now we're on that really exciting cusp between benchtop testing. As Trey said, we've got the prototype, minimum viable product, if you will, the demonstrations, and now we're moving more to people actually trying this thing on. So we've got a wait list of amputees in Canada and the United States, all across North America who want to try it on, who are excited to get that first socket on a leg. So that's a really exciting time for us. The next year looks like a lot of testing, a lot of user feedback, some more clinical collaborations that are coming down the pipeline, which we're really excited about. And then a year from now, we hope to be selling we plan to be selling the first devices. So we're really excited for that. We're going to be launching in the United States. And we've got some key relationships there that will really help us with that translation, if you will. So very excited about that. 10 years from now, we see this being a cornerstone in the prosthetics market. This is a device that can be used by the average, if you will, amputee, the person who is part of the aging population, maybe has diabetes, and needs help managing that limb health. And it can be used by the really high activity Paralympian folks to keep their limbs healthy when they're not training, when they're going to the grocery store and they don't want to get a blister just walking around. So it's really an accessible solution that is affordable, can be used by anybody, and we see it as helping not only the early stage of rehabilitation, but the chronic stages of living with a prosthetic leg.
Yeah, amazing. If you can lower that percentage of people who, decide that they would rather not walk at all, have no mobility rather than be in pain, that would be incredible. Before I let both of you go, I do like to wrap up with one fun question, which is, if, Sydney, you had access to a time machine and you could go back to the very beginnings, even before Vessl was a thought in your head, and give yourself one piece of advice, what would you say to younger Sydney?
Oh, that's such a good question. What would I say to younger
Thanks.
Sydney? What would I say to younger Sydney? I would say, and this is always my go-to answer, and I always try and rack my brain to see if there's something else I've come up with and I haven't. And it is that the network is the most important. And it was something that I learned very early on as I was starting entrepreneurship. But exactly as Trey said, like the access to the Techstars network, the access to people who had done it before, who can sit there and say, oh, yeah, I did that with my third company or in 2 years ago or whatever it is. No worries, you're normal. Totally, it's happened to everybody. You always feel like you're the only one who's possibly ever experienced this, and you're not. So I feel like the network, and you never know who knows somebody. So opportunities come out of the woodwork like you wouldn't believe, and the network is always the most important. Really prioritize that.
Okay, so Trey, Sydney's just about to step into the time machine. She picks up the phone and she calls you and says, Trey, help me out. What should I be telling myself, my younger Sydney? What would you be telling Sydney to tell young Sydney?
I would say, and I find this more prevalent with female entrepreneurs than others. Um, Typically, as white tech guys, we're sort of ignorant enough to think that we can handle it all and get it all taken care of. We have, I would call absurd optimism, which again sometimes borders the line of arrogance and ignorance because you have to be ignorant to think that you're as great as some of us think we are. Is I would just say, remember that you can do this. Remember that you're good enough. Remember that you are the person, you are the best person in the world to build this company. And every time that you question that, and this goes for any entrepreneurs, not just female entrepreneurs, but specifically with female entrepreneurs, is really understanding and recognizing they are as good, if not better, than they think that they are. And that piece helps a lot of times when you have to deal with the fact that less than 2% of venture capital goes to women. You have to deal with the fact that when you walk into a room, people assume that the man is the one that's in charge, right? That this is, and I have several companies that I co-founded with women, amazing women entrepreneurs, and it infuriates me that that's the way that the world works. But the ignorance, naivete, and prejudice of men should not affect Sydney's knowledge and understanding that she's the right person to build this company. So that's what I would say.
I would love to,
and you're going to do great.
Usually that's the last question, but I'd be remiss if I didn't dig deep further into this, though, Sydney. How accurate is that world that Trey describes of being a woman, particularly in a male-dominated tech sector?
So for context, I'm a short white female. My co-founder is a tall, broad-shouldered white male. And when we network together, I've had people just look at him and ask him questions, and make jokes or comments to me that they definitely wouldn't make to him. There's certainly just a different level of, or type, I guess, of engagement that people think is appropriate sometimes with female founders. So I found that. I've also found the opposite. I have one investor who is the father of three girls, and is super passionate about, like Trey is, like you just saw, like very, very passionate about supporting female founders. So there is for sure the vast majority of this kind of like ignorance and weird engagement level, and oh, but when you know the balancing of being at home with children, I don't have children, but being at home with children versus not, like it's just a very interesting space. But finding the people like Trey and like our investor who really believe in you as a female, and exactly as Trey said, like I don't know inside of a male's brain, so I can't say, but I definitely had thoughts of like, oh, I can't, can't do this, it can't be me, whatever. And just exactly as Trey said, remembering like, no, you can. You are very qualified. You've brought it this far. Who's to say you can't bring it farther? Like you are the only person who can decide that. So get a move on, keep building, and it's incredibly helpful.
Well, I'm really excited about seeing where Vessl goes. I would love to check up with each of you a year from now and see just, where things stand and how things have changed. I thank you both so much for giving us your very valuable time and talking to me today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ken. It was a pleasure.
Yes, thanks for having us.
My sincere thanks to both Sydney Robinson, CEO and co-founder of Vessl Prosthetics, and to Trey Boyles, Managing Director, Techstars Physical Health in Fort Worth, for joining us. Idea to Investment is made possible by the support of Tech Alliance of Southwestern Ontario. If you'd like to learn more about Tech Alliance and the resources available to entrepreneurs and startups, go to techalliance.ca. My name is Ken Eastwood. Thank you so much for joining me.